Hello and thanks for joining me on the program. I am Adeshewa Josh. We are already midway into the year 2015 and a lot has happened across board, economically and politically, within several sectors of the economy. Now, you will agree with me that most organizations at this time will normally go back to the drawing board to see how far they have come in terms of set goals and how well or badly projects have been implemented, so they can be better positioned before the end of their financial year. The Bank of Industry has been doing this and more, reviewing strategies in order to serve you better by creating liquidity of opportunities for entrepreneurs, for both startups and existing conglomerates. So, here's what happened over the weekend. The MD of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa, and his team took out time to meet with stakeholders to discuss plans the development institution has for the future, including upgrading its operational processes to global best practices in a bid to serve you better.
Our new vision statement is that we want to be Africa's leading development finance institution operating under global best practices.
The agricultural sector due to limited processing and preservation capacity. This results in high food prices and food importation with its attendant effects on the nation's foreign reserves. To enable Nigerians optimize the benefits from the country's vast agricultural products such as cassava, oil palm, rice, tomatoes and others, the Bank of Industry has launched a 5 billion naira cottage agro-processing fund, the CAP Fund. Customers can access the fund to establish plans to process our various agro-produce into food products or intermediate raw materials for industries at a single-digit interest rate of 9% per annum. For more information on the CAP Fund, please visit www.boinigeria.com/capfund. Bank of Industry, developing Nigeria's agro-processing industry through the CAP Fund.
When Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa took over the reins of power at the Bank of Industry last year, many markets watchers knew the game will change, based on his backlog of success as an astute banker. You will recall I spoke with him shortly after he took office about what the future holds for the engine of our nation's potentially vibrant manufacturing sector in the face of a global dwindling price of oil and his plans for growing the bank's reputation in Africa.
What we're trying to do is twofold. First, we want to adopt global best practices in a number of areas, in terms of governance, in terms of risk management practices, in terms of compliance, in terms of customer service, in terms of a number of areas. And secondly, we want to increase the amount of impact that we make in the society.
Months after, he is already steering the team towards the new directions he spoke to me about at the interview. Here, Mr. Olaoluwa presents to stakeholders at a retreat in Lagos the bank's directory for more developmental impact.
We have these 15 items on the agenda, which I will classify into two broad categories. The first one is, how can BOI make an impact? Because that's the essence of our being. That is our purpose, our mission. How can we make an impact? The second broad objective is, how can we adopt global best practices? Because all the other banks that we've looked at, from Brazil to India to Malaysia to even Africa, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, the leading DFIs have a few things in common. And if we are going to become a leading DFI, we also need to begin to do what they do.
After dotting the I's and crossing the T's, through drawing inferences from other highly sophisticated development banks around the world, Mr. Olaoluwa then began to reel out the strategies to put BOI on the map.
The first thing in this kind of institution is governance, very important. If you talk to any international development finance institution, the first thing they will mention is governance. How is the institution governed? How is the institution run? Is it run as a cult? Is it run under the table? Or is it run transparently, that everyone can see what is going on? So it was important that Our board was inaugurated on the 15th of July last year, and we got to work immediately. We developed a robust board charter. That board charter has provision for board committees. So at BOI today, we have 4 board committees. A board committee for finance and general purpose, for credit and investment, for audit, and for risk and governance. These committees have been very active. They meet quarterly. They look at all aspects of BOI's operation. We make full disclosures to these committees. And our directors are also being trained just to ensure that they can understand our language.
After rolling out the new effective structure and values BOI will be running with, it's now time to talk business.
We have the Large Enterprise Directorate, which we have realigned with the National Industrial Plan. And the National Industrial Plan itself emerged from there was a report that was issued in 2013 by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, which advocated commodity-based industrialization for African economies. In other words, you have natural resources, you have commodities. Can you add value to them, before you export? So instead of exporting raw agricultural products, can you process them locally? Instead of mineral excavation and exporting, can you do beneficiation? Can you process the minerals? Instead of just exporting crude, can you refine? Can you set up fertilizer plants? Can you set up petrochemical plants, and so on and so forth? So this is what we have restructured our Large Enterprise Directorate to focus on. Just to mention 2 sectors that we have looked at, cottage agro-processing. Because we know that not everybody wants to do 1 billion naira, 500 million naira to do rice processing and all that. There are small-scale companies that just need 10 million, 20 million to set up a small cassava processing plant, palm oil processing plant, and so on and so forth. Can we not support them? And we have created a product. Now, that product does not require bank guarantee. That product does not require legal mortgage. It's there, it's available, and people are started applying, and they're being processed.
Again, the MD took out time to answer the most asked question by many entrepreneurs, especially those just starting out.
People always ask me, what does it take to get a loan from BOI? And I say, okay, you know what, we need to put this information in the public space so that people know that, this transparency, we really want people to appreciate it. That these are the conditions.
So these are the eligibility criteria for all seeking funds from the Bank of Industry. Small, medium, and large enterprises, including cottage agro-processors through the CAP Fund, new or existing companies seeking expansion, modernization, or diversification, credit-worthy promoters who will be required to prove their commitment to the project by contributing at least 25% of the project cost, excluding land. Borrowers whose management capability, financial situation, including availability of collateral and guarantee, character and reputation are incontrovertible. Clients with demonstrable ability to meet loan repayments. And finally, borrowers with no record of unpaid loans to erstwhile development finance institutions and other banks. If you fall within the above criteria, then you may be asking how to apply. Here is how. Write a formal application letter. Step 2. Complete BOI's questionnaire. You can either pick it up online at www.boinigeria.com or visit any of the offices closest to you. And lastly, submit your forms and questionnaire.
We remain committed to the pursuit of our core mandate of providing long-term financial support to small, medium, and large enterprises and projects in Nigeria. And as we are doing so, we are also going to continue to adopt global best practices.
So, how well has the small and medium enterprises sector fared since Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa resumed office? Let's hear from the Executive Director of Small and Medium Enterprises of the Bank of Industry.
Over the last 13 years, for example, 2001, 2014, less than 10% of our risk assets went to MSMEs. And that was why the MD, when he resumed, decided to set up a new directorate to tackle MSMEs. And we realized that if we came up with a risk asset of 683 billion, creating 1.8 million jobs, with less than 10% of that amount going to SMEs, we probably would have been able to create more jobs if, for example, we have been able to approve 30% of our risk assets to SMEs, because the developmental impact of SMEs per unit of investment is much higher than what you have with larger enterprises. So that's why we have a target to ensure that by 2019 or 2020, about 30% of our risk assets will be accounted for by MSMEs. This year alone, we have a disbursement target of 15 billion naira, and we plan to create about 60,000 jobs.
To be able to do that, the Bank of Industry has set up more offices across the states to enable easy access for all loan applications.
The regional offices were reorganized and strengthened, some of them in line with the growth poles of the various regions. For example, Southwest region used to be based in Akure, but it was moved to Ibadan. As we all know, the Southwest economy is driven more from Ibadan. Same thing for South-South. It used to be in Asaba. It's moved to Port Harcourt now. And I'll go to the state office as well. We've increased our representation by more than 100% across the country. We used to have 7 offices. We now have 14 offices.
Also, Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa revealed another milestone achievement of the Bank of Industry during his presentation about working capital for SMEs.
We give long and medium-term funds at 10% average. Some can be lower than 10%, like the Dangote facility we talked about, 5%. Some state funds are lower than 10%, depending on the MOUs we have with them. But for working capital, SMEs have challenges getting working capital from commercial banks. And when we were negotiating with the commercial banks, they said the risk must be properly priced. So they were not ready to give concessional interest rates because they say SMEs account for a high percentage of their non-performing loans. That how will they defend it before their board to say they're charging lower interest rates where the risk is very, very, very high? But under pressure from the MD, being a commercial banker himself, they were able to agree with us that, look, in national interest, we must all defend this country. We must all develop this country. So they agreed that whatever the MPR is, as set by the central bank, they will charge 6% above whatever the MPR is. So because the current MPR is 13%, the effective rate is 19%.
At the end of the day, appropriate government policies are pivotal to the success of any development bank, and Mr. Olaoluwa is optimistic the incoming government is up to the challenge.